All right, I hereby call this meeting, the workshop, to order at this time. First of all, on the agenda is a call meeting to open bids for HVAC on train car project. We will open the bid. One bid from Valley Heating and Air at $19,000 to install a system. This is all the drain pipes that's included. Will include a Wi-Fi Honeywell Pro 8000 thermostat. The warranty on system is 1 year labor, 10-year parts, and 10-year compressor. This quote is good for 60 days from today, dated September 26, 2022. Do I hear a motion we accept?
Is it within our budget?
It's in the budget already.
It is within the train car budget, but originally we only budgeted about $12,000, but I guess it's the only bid we got. And this is on the TDOT, or the Tourism Enhancement Grant.
Tourism grant paid for.
Would you all like to look at it before we vote on it? Yeah, I mean, the elevator wasn't much more than the heating and air quote was. Well, the first time we bid it was a better price, and then we found out that it didn't comply with state code requirements, so we rebid it, and the price was much higher. It was around $23,000, I think, for the elevator. So the elevator and the HVAC is going to eat up a lot of that $90,000 grant, but we still have, because the street department's done so much of the work, we have quite a bit of money in that budget. So
When is it ready? Is it ready for the air conditioning system to be put in now?
it is. The elevator is scheduled to be installed in the next couple of weeks, and the HVAC, David didn't want to cover anything up until he knew what kind of electrical hookups he needed for the HVAC, so that's kind of the next step. The only thing that we absolutely have to finish paying for is the flooring and the rest of the reupholstery on the seats. So I think that we'll still be okay budget-wise. Obviously, HVAC and elevators are two required elements for it to make an ADA, so we really don't have much of a choice, but that is quite a bit more than what we had anticipated paying when we budgeted for it 2 years ago.
Do we know the square footage of the car?
The train car is like 90 feet long, so that's why we couldn't do the little Mitsubishi units.
Right.
That's why we ended up having, the recommendation of the electrician and the HVAC people were to do a full dubbed out. Because they said if you do one of Mitsubishi units, which is what we kind of talked about doing the first time, it just wasn't going to be able to power the length of the train car because it's so long. So they are going to run duct work through the train car. Well, they said that would be even more, I mean, as expensive as doing the ducted one, so they suggested we do the ducted one. They said the look of the ducted one would be better. If you go inside the train car, there's a metal shelf that runs along the top of the train car. So we had thought originally maybe we could put those Mitsubishi units in on top of that shelf and they wouldn't be very visible. But apparently that's not going to fit. They would have to move that shelf. And, you know, we want to try and keep it as close to the original as we can. Obviously running duct work through it. We're talking about doing that coiled duct work that's a little more aesthetically pleasing. That's going to make it a little tighter. I mean, but
Is it 12 foot? Is it 12 foot?
it's not
I'm
super
trying
tight.
to calculate the square footage and tonnage.
Probably 900 square foot, so you're looking at 18,000 BTU. Roughly. Buster, am I right?
It's 3 tons.
I
For
think
how-
it's too many. You think it might be too big a unit?
That's what I'm wondering. How
It's
big
not,
are
it can be too big and not do the job.
Yeah.
However, the insulating factor
Yeah.
of that car is maybe what he's compensating for as well.
That's true.
Separate side, you see where they're pretty
And
similar.
they did mention, you know, one of the plans with it, when we put the original seating back into it, is to let people, they'll have Wi-Fi on there inside the unit, is to let them use it kind of as co-working space. So if it gets full of people, there's 20 people in there, he really felt like we would need a ducted unit. I don't know about the size of the unit, but since he's the only bid we got, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I bet we could award him as the bidder and then maybe ask him to talk with Sam about the
Yeah,
fast one. No. Okay. I mean, we do have it in the grant budget, we can do it still, even with that price.
I make a motion to accept the entire bid from
Now,
Now,
here a second?
second.
Any more discussion?
I would just ask, you know, just for some clarification's sake, based on the tonnage and the square footage, if there was any other approach, you know. And that may be it, but it just seemed a little large, but probably the insulating factor plus putting an assembly, you know, 20 people, may be the factor. That's all.
Well, if we're gonna discuss it that way, we can get all the trailer people, and we could probably put trailer units up on top of it.
Well, I think Jason will do us right. It's just, you know, the unknowns of those few questions. Just get some clarification is all. But like I say, Jason's definitely done good work, so.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. I assume that you'll probably get with Jason and Sam or whoever and go over and make sure that
Yeah, I can ask
with
him
the
a
question
few
that you
questions I
asked.
have.
Yeah. And he's easy to work with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the CDBG home grant funding. Jessica has an update at this time.
so I went to Monroe County Mobile Homes last Thursday and sat down at their computer and went through their SAM's registration under their login. If you'll remember, the holdup was that we couldn't get them on the federal registry through SAM's, which is now required in order to get reimbursed for purchasing this final home for the home grant on Blair Avenue. So it looks like she had done everything right, but for whatever reason, it was still sitting in draft application status. So I resubmitted. It did actually show me that it was a submitted application, and it also assigned a unique entity ID. So that doesn't mean that the registration is complete with SAM's, but it was complete enough that they gave me that ID number. So when I forwarded that onto the state on Thursday, about 2 hours ago before this meeting, we got an email back from the state approving us to purchase from Monroe County Mobile Homes. So that was perfect timing, because now we don't even have to take a vote on this, because the state has approved it, so we are going to be able to spend the rest of the home grants for this home. And the board had already previously voted to make up the difference using ARPA money for
Right.
everything that went over budget.
Okay.
We will be doing a budget amendment through the home grant on this, but Mitch Loomis is taking care of that for us. So this problem solved itself.
Okay, good. Workshop discussion. Review October 3rd, 2022 agenda. Beer ordinance number 1009. John has drafted this.
I don't, there, you know, it's redoes the whole chapter, so it's very large. Everything through about 8 to 11, which is half of it or so, is pretty much the same as it was. There's an additional section at the very beginning for definitions, which is required to understand the last part of it, which is 8 to 12, where we have added the authority under our ordinance for a downtown festival district for beer permits that are just for special occasions. They only last for while there's a special occasion, while we're having a festival. I guess we can add beer to balloons, barbecue, whatever now. It has a whole lot of requirements for anybody that applies for this, including it has to be at least 45 days in advance. They have to attend the beer board meeting where it's discussed, so that to answer any questions. The geographic boundaries where this can happen is in the downtown district, south of North Street, in other words, the post office, east of Main Street. So this permit will not be out in the street, not out in Main Street, that is. And it excludes any kids zones. Originally had Duck Park in there, but we thought there may be times it would be appropriate in the Duck Park, and there might be times when we want to designate kids zones as somewhere else than the Duck Park. So they have to, in their application, say exactly where they're going to be. So you won't be in a meeting with somebody saying, well, the ordinance says we can have it some other place. Also, this is limited to where they are going to be distributing beer. In other words, they'll have to have space just like everybody else in the festival. They can't have a cart walking around selling beer that way. They have to check IDs. There's no refills. They have to check, they have to have wristbands so that the officers can tell that their ID's been checked. But they're required to check the ID every time. So just because you got a wristband doesn't mean that you can go back and get another beer, because who knows how you got the wristband off and gave it to somebody that shouldn't have it. That is somebody that's 19 or 20 or whatever. All of the laws about consumption of beer, except where they are, still apply. Still can't be publicly drunk. There will be signs. There have to be signs posted where if a festival has beer, where these boundaries were that I talked about, so it's clear to anybody that they can't take their beer and leave that way. Nobody's allowed to bring beer into the festival area. You can only have it from whoever's been granted a permit. There's a whole lot more specifics in there. I think those are all the high points. The other thing I would mention is it also covers wine and beer if the statute gives the ABC the authority to issue special event licenses for wine and for beer. So if the state approves them, they still have to get a permit from us, pretty much the same as any other wine or liquor. So the state can give them a license, but we still control all of the details, just like we do for beer permits. So that's the highlights.
Will the cost, their permit, when they buy a permit, just like any other vendor, does that cover the cost of them selling beer, or what can we make it like an additional fee on top of that?
Well, the cost of the permit is $25. The cost of the
I mean, this is,
They have to get a beer permit in addition to their vendor fee.
Yeah,
what's a beer permit cost?
$100, no. They have to post a $100 bond and $250, I think, is for money.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have to go through the same process that a regular business is selling beer all year long has to go through. They pay the same price as that one business selling all year long.
Okay,
yeah,
what about-
one other thing I forgot to mention is that it does, the ordinance does provide that for businesses that are, that border this district, this beer market district, who already have a permit to sell beer, can sell beer on the sidewalk in front of their business without having the special event permit. Mainly because it just really didn't seem fair that they couldn't compete, even though they're there all year, one of our regular businesses or property owners, and, thinking, for instance, of Hunters. Hunters does not, their permit doesn't cover any kind of patio seating because they don't really have a patio. And the Renos sells beer, they don't really have a patio either. This is saying it's okay for them to participate in a way from their own business without having to go through a whole additional thing for this.
This ordinance also, we talked about this last year at a board meeting, it also adds a definition and a structure for anyone who wants to open a microbrewery or a craft beer establishment, which we don't have in the old ordinance, so this adds a provision for that. They have to go through all the same requirements and everything, and there's definitions of what makes a craft beer. Like they have to have at least 20 seeds, they make less than 6 million barrels a year. Microbrewery is not more than 25,000 barrels of beer annually, and they have to have seating for at least 40 people.
So let me ask you this question. Say, for an example, a guy comes down and he buys a couple of beers from our vendor, and he's been drinking before he comes. So he's on the way home and he kills somebody and said, well, I got it down at the festival. They sold it to me. Are we covered?
I think we would be for a number of reasons. One of the things I didn't mention that this ordinance does require is that any vendor who's serving beer can only sell it through a person, I don't know what you call it. The dispenser has to actually be certified by the state to serve alcohol. We're not one. We decided it's easy. We shouldn't have to go through any process. They have to, if their server's not certified, then they don't have a server. And
That's what I'm saying.
And the other
The
thing
server
is-
has to be certified, just like you go to the bar.
Exactly.
And it has the same training.
that's not to say that they could be mistaken, or they might not, somebody might get violent like you're talking about. But we won't have to, they can't be publicly drunk. They can be not arrested,
Why
but they
do
can
we
be
need
removed
this?
by the police officers if not.
I'm wondering why we need this to start with. In other words, you're saying a guy sets up in a certain area, but he can get it in a beer can. Can he carry the beer can
Has to be-
uptown?
Has to be plastic cup, it has to be a new pad plastic cup every time, so.
Okay, and he can get it at this designated area and come and walk all over town with it if he wants to.
No, he can only, he can get it in that space.
That's space.
He can only walk around in the festival. Let's say he gets a beer over here, he can walk over and try
At the
3 or 4
park.
different barbecues. No,
Can he go to the other part?
only if y'all's, only ordinarily not. you can't take it to any kid's zone, and that's usually gonna be the designated kid's zone, it's gonna be blood parties. But if there was a concert over there in the duck park, that was the only, somebody wanted to set up there, and that was the only place they were gonna be allowed to have the beer at all, you ought to approve that. This gives you all the authority to do these things. It doesn't say you have to ever approve any of them.
I think just throw my 2 cents out there.
Yeah.
I like to sit back and
There's
have a
no
cold
beer
beer just as well as the
trucks,
next
like when we
door.
tell them we don't, they're not allowed to sell.
This just seems to me like some trouble.
So we
Be
can't,
worth
they
it. I
can't
just,
even
I don't,
take beer trucks.
It may,
Would a beer truck
I
qualify
don't,
for a
to
service?
me, it's gonna be taken away from
They
our
have to be
festivals. by doing something like that.
certified.
I just don't know why.
They have to be certified through the state to serve, just like every restaurant in town. They're allowed to serve, they have to buy it, pay their tax on it, just like all the other restaurants do. And they have to card that person when they serve it, and they have to have a liquor license. They have to have insurance.
they're talking about a beer truck.
What would be I understand you want to have a wristband, but, and they're supposed, I'm supposed to stay in that designated area. Suppose I buy, mayor example, buy me a beer in the duck park, I make the round, and I'm ready to go home, and I've parked it in the hospital parking lot. I need to finish my beer before I can go get my coffee, right?
No, you can pour it out.
Well, I can't
You can't take
can't
it with
leave
you.
it, yeah.
So if I don't know to do that, or I forget to do that, and,
No, it
the
requires-
chief stops me up there by the drugstore, I've got on my wristband, I'm outside the area, what's my do? Can you charge me?
It might just be a
Well,
city
chances
code
are that
violation.
It's not West
right?
Dakota.
I mean,
And if you want, he would charge you anyway. If you somebody saying public consumption.
I mean, I guess
I'm
they
there.
could charge a $50 ticket for violating the city code of the chapter of the beer ordinance,
I
right?
walk back,
Yeah.
whether by accident or intent.
But one of the things that,
It's their obligation to stop me, what happens if they didn't?
but one of the things that they could decide, like she said, they could actually, they've got a lot of discretion, they just take the beer, pour it out, and not do anything else. One of the things that the chief and I talked about when we went over it is whoever the sponsor of the event is, not the individual vendor.
Yeah.
But if there's gonna be beer, the sponsor of the event has to have signs at every intersection where you might be leaving the area saying, you're leaving the beer permit area, you can't be.
Let me ask you another question. Part of it that allows existing businesses to sell on the sidewalk. If I go to Hunter's and buy a beer and sell on the sidewalk, I have to stay in Hunter's.
Well, you can't take your beer across the street into the
That's what I
festival
mean.
area, because you
But I
won't
won't have money.
have a ban.
Okay.
I do, and I could be wrong about this, I'm probably shouldn't even say it, but in other states, they've authorized districts where you're allowed to carry, what do they call it, growler? You can like carry a growler. When we went to the World Tourism Conference in Mississippi, they had a district designated that you could walk anywhere inside that district, and you would go to different restaurants, and you could pay to have that growler refilled at each restaurant, and they designated this district. I know the state of Tennessee has looked at something similar to that, and I'm pretty sure it was restricted to an area in Nashville, like maybe the Gulch or somewhere in there, where they could do something like that. They have not passed it statewide to allow that anywhere outside of that specific district yet. So the two requests that we've actually had that are concrete examples of what might happen fairly quickly if this is passed is one, the marathon last year. Believe it or not, runners like to drink beer after they run a marathon. So they have beer trucks in Knoxville that come to their races and serve the runners beer. That can't happen in Sweetwater right now as our beer ordinance is written. So this tries to make an avenue for that, if that's something we want. Then the other one we have is an existing business owner that has a beer permit already downtown. He wants to set up a vendor space at the festival and sell beer. And this would allow that to happen. So those are the two ways I see it playing out that we've already had requests on. And then the other thing is like when we have a private event downtown, they don't have to get, if Main Street did a fundraiser and it was sold by ticket, they could actually give out wine at that event, assuming they met any state regulations. But they couldn't put beer as part of the ticket price, or even if a cover was charged, they wouldn't be allowed to serve beer. So it's kind of funny that there's an avenue for them to be able to serve wine and something like that, and there's not one right now to be able to serve beer. So that was another thing we thought, is if you do a fundraiser downtown and you have a dinner or something, to be able to serve beer, this makes it an avenue for that.
Is there only one vendor allowed for festival? I mean,
There's no limit.
We didn't limit it. If you think that's something we need to look at, we could talk about that. I can't imagine there would be, I don't know that there would ever be so many that we would need to turn people away. As it stands right now, that would kind of be up to whatever nonprofit organization is requesting the permit for their festival. They could say, oh, we're only gonna take one beer truck, or we're only gonna take one vendor. I know the chamber, when they do events, a lot of times they will say there's only one vendor allowed because that person is sponsoring and donating that beer to be sold, and then they do it as a fundraiser back to the chamber. So that might be something that we look at eventually too. But as it stands right now, I guess it's up to the nonprofit to decide how many vendors they were allowed to sell.
So right now, we have a bluegrass, July 4th, small town Christmas. What else could they?
If they wanted to have a farm to table dinner, they could pull a nonprofit permit for that. If they wanted to have if Kiwanis Club, I don't think Kiwanis ever would, but let's say they wanted to have it at a race they were sponsoring, they could, or Knoxville Track Club could do it at a race. The city may never want to do it. We may never want to do it at 4th of July. It may not, because it's not a separate nonprofit that does 4th of July, so we may never want to do it at that event. That'll be up to the city to decide.
So let me ask this question. So we've had two individuals, a vendor and a local business, ask, well, not the vendor, the Knoxville Track.
Actually, I think we had a beer truck call, sorry, I missed it on vacation, but I think we had a beer truck call last year before Blue Bluegrass asked if they could set up and return away because we didn't have a.
Well, vendors cannot apply under this just because they want to sell beer. Right, this has to be sponsored and by a non-profit.
And that's where I was.
Yeah,
that's
they
where-
can't just come set up on a Monday to sell beer, it has to be during the festival.
But that's where I was headed with this type of question. Obviously, the concern of liability of the city is real, and that's why we're talking about it and having this discussion. But would the city have the opportunity to say, for instance, at Small Town Christmas, we don't want that at this particular one, but maybe we do want it at barbecue in Bluegrass?
They have to come before the full beer board every time, right?
Every time, it has to be at least 45
Every-
days ahead, and they have to, there's a whole list, they have to, what's gonna be served, who's gonna serve it, where it's gonna be.
Are you asking though if that can get us in a pinch to deny it for one festival and not for
Yes.
another?
Yes, that's where it's, I mean, do we have that power? If I
You
can
have
use
that
that word?
discretion.
Yeah. So
So obviously, it's less appropriate sometimes than others.
That's where I
On the
was
other hand,
headed.
if somebody, as we did, somebody wanted to be able to give away or sell mulled wine at Christmas, at small town Christmas, that's a lot different from beer. And they might be able to get an ABC permit for
I mean,
that.
for discussions purposes, just like National Night Out, there are kids everywhere.
I'm sure the police department would not want a beer truck in National
But I'm just saying, once you put it in place, there
It
is.
might help me get through it a little bit easier than that, I'm sorry.
There is that discussion, so that's why I asked if we have the discretion to say it would absolutely be appropriate for this type of event with this type and age of users, but it wouldn't be that appropriate for this one. And that's what I'm saying.
And we have that discretion.
Do we?
Yes, as long as whatever action you take as the beer board
Right.
is not arbitrary, because for some reason, nobody likes the vendor, and we're not gonna let you do it, but we don't have any good reasons. But as long as you articulate sound reasons that have a reasonable attachment.
And I think you're saying we
what
wanna
the
keep
event
small town
is.
Christmas as a family event and we don't want alcohol served there. That sounds reasonable enough. What,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
that's
it's
all.
just like National Night Out. I mean, there are examples where it would be appropriate, and there's probably examples where it would not. And that's the discretion portion, because it's kind of like use on review, you know.
Yeah.
Every time an event comes up, it's going to be reviewed by the beer board, which is
Yes.
obviously this one. Just because we have this,
Doesn't mean you have to use it.
thank you for finishing that statement. I was afraid to say out loud.
Well,
And don't forget, the microbrewery is something that is becoming more popular.
Sure.
And that might be the first thing that we use on this. It may be years before we even get a
But-
request for a festival permit.
But as we all know, unless we have something, anything can happen. So obviously, this is a procedure to cover all those bases that we don't have ordinances for.
And we can put this off as long as y'all want to. Really, the only reason it's on this agenda for October is because me and John had finished doing everything we knew to do to it, and Eddie's looked at it for a month or so, and we were like, well, we don't have anything else to do to it, let's go ahead and show it to them. We're not trying to get it passed for any specific event. We're already past the deadline for the marathon Saturday, we're already past the deadline probably for Small Town Christmas. So it's not, there's no rush on it. If we wanna sit
Do
and
we
hash this
have
out, we can.
to vote on this? When do we vote on this, or is it already?
It's on the October agenda, but it's not necessary, it's on for first reading October 3rd, but we don't have to vote on it, it's totally up to y'all.
And, yeah, just because it's on the agenda doesn't mean that there'll be anybody who moves for its adoption.
Right.
Just
Just-
because like she said, we've done everything, I've reviewed, I didn't keep count, but I've reviewed at least 5 different cities' ordinances who have adopted this kind of thing, and every restriction that any of them have is in here.
And that's what I was about to ask as well, is there any towns our size that you selected?
I think Athens, they have it, don't they?
I don't know, I didn't even check, because,
I'd be curious.
Morristown, did we use Morristown? That may have been the other
yeah,
ordinance. we were talking
Morristown and Kingsport, but neither one of those are really in a small town like we are. To answer your question, I don't know that there are any as small as 6,000.
All right, we'll,
But anyway, that's it.
we'll go from there, so everybody pretty clear on it. Okay, next up for review is review plans for community center. We've been kind of working on this for 2 or 3 years, and COVID hit. We've got a committee which consists of a couple of our board members, Buster and Lamar. Sam, were you on that? Just in draft, right?
Yes, so just
Okay.
provider of information.
Well, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, on Thursday. We had a joint meeting with the utility board, and they have decided to build their new building. They have voted to go ahead with it. As a matter of fact, Chuck was before the planning commission last Monday night and presented the plans. Sam had drawn up, and so they are ready to get started. They have a 360-day window,
50.
50.
But
That,
with weather, they'll probably be 365.
yeah. But anyway, this is a good time for us to talk about it. I think we need to kind of get our ducks in a row. We can buy the building for $700,000. That's what, who was it, Hal, that appraised it at? Around 700,000. So we do have money put back. The American Rescue Plan will, and correct me if I'm wrong, will pay for that. And we've got another 750,000 coming, probably coming next year, right?
I think we might end up getting it in 2023, the beginning of 2023.
Yeah. So that'll give us, that will fit into the community community center too. But anyway, Sam has drawn some plans, I guess you've already looked at them. Some renditions of what we can house. I think it's a beautiful plan. I think it's something the city needs. There could be some changes on it, I'm sure there will be. And Sam, I'm gonna ask you to review where do we go from here.
I mean, the next phase of the project would be to look at getting engineers involved, which is site, civil, structural, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical for the areas that would be, you know, added on to the building. And then as far as putting this out to bid, you know, that would be the ultimate way to find out what the exact cost is. And until it's truly bid, especially in today's environment, we're kind of thumb in the wind. There's some ballparks floating out there, but in today's environment, this project could be $3 to $4 million. I mean, that's a real possibility in today's environment. One approach that we could take based on how it's laid out is we could do an approach where you build the whole thing, it costs X. If you only did like the front portion and the existing building without the back portion, that could be a phase 2, the price would be Y. But as far as moving forward with the project, it would be pulling in the team of engineers to do the complete set of construction drawings. As far as, you know, changes to the existing plan, this was our first pass based on, it's like the mayor said, that we kind of got started before COVID. We had several meetings, we put together the program, and we've tried to incorporate all of those pieces and parts into the plan. Just to kind of reiterate the plan, the middle section of the plan, the large kind of rectangular area, that is the existing footprint of the existing building. Obviously, in the elevations, the blue component is the existing warehouse, and then we've built these appendages on the front and the back. So a lot of the additions to the building would be 4 to 5 classrooms that could be used by the community, a pretty good sized kitchen so that you could have catered events, fairly large storage area so that, for instance, the middle section that could be used for anything to basketball, volleyball, indoor soccer, pickleball, gym, and event area. We would have area of storage for seating, for chairs, for tables, etc. And then we could have a mezzanine area that would be over the restroom, kitchen, and storage area, which would give us those 5 classrooms. Then there would be a multi-purpose area up there as well. But once again, those components, those parts were programmed kind of over those 2 years. So if there's any additional requests or adjustments before we got started, we would look at, you know, doing options on that as well. So just let us know. As far as, you know, the time period with SUV, their project taking, you know, 350 days for all practical purposes. In a perfect world, it would be September, end of September, basically October of next year before they truly would be out. So if you wanted to look at it in that sense, and I use this term loosely, but in a perfect world, if you wanted to start construction October of next year, when they move out, what you would do is kind of back up from there. So to start in October, you would move kind of a bid opening back 6 weeks, 2 months, so that would be September, August. And then as far as the prep of the rest of the documents, you're looking 3 to 4 months. So that would be July, June, May, April. So sometime
Of 2024,
well, next year. So
next year.
Next year. As far as taking care of the engineering design aspect, truly we've got until say March of 2023. It is 22, right? All right. So March of 23 to basically award to start on the whole set of construction documents, and then go through design, go through bid, and then go through contract award to start construction on this project as SUB moves out. That schedule and timing and approach make sense.
But don't you think it's a good idea to start on it now, and as far as talk about, we keep doing it until we get the bids, of course, like that, but will that give us plenty of time to make up our mind whether we want to borrow the money? And then,
It would be nice if the board would kind of give a general feeling about how they feel about the plan for financing it. And I agree with Sam, I'm thinking this could easily be a $3 million project. And that could even be $3 million to do all this, not including the $700,000 that we've already set aside from COVID money to pay for the building. So if we set aside that $700,000, which we've already voted on, for buying the building, then we kind of guesstimate, say maybe we'll get around $3 million for bids to construct and fabricate this whole thing out. My thought is we put $2.2 million back into fund balance, and $874,000 of that was COVID money. But still, we were $1.4 or $1.5 million that we added back to fund balance this year that we were not planning on adding back to fund balance. So in my mind, it would make sense for us to spend $1 million out of fund balance and not hurt ourselves any, and then borrow maybe $2 million. And I would prefer to work with TML Bond Fund, just because we always stay out of trouble when we work with TML Bond Fund, because they do know what they're doing, and file all the paperwork that has to be filed and all of that. So if we go through the bond fund, Linda can get us, from the time she quotes the bond rate to the time we log in and vote on it, to the time that we are issued the money, that can be a 45-day window. So if the board agrees that they want to move forward with this project, and we want to tell Sam to get a proposal together for doing all the engineer drawings and all of that, if we agree to move that way, and if I can at least get an agreement that, yeah, this is kind of how we want to handle the money side of it. If you all say you want to take off $3 million out of fund balance, technically we have the money to do that if you wanted to. But
The other aspect, and one of the reasons why I give that kind of timing scenario is we have contractors, we have subs that it's not their fault, it's the environment that we're in. They can't hold prices barely 30 days. Sometimes 2 weeks. So that's why I say when this truly does go, putting it in that kind of schedule, but because by the time the process of the project time frame, say start and end, that puts us in real time and real numbers that can be held for 30 days, 40 days. But if we started now and bid it in March, couldn't start until SUB moves out in October, those numbers are basically no. So that's why I merely shared that schedule and moving it forward in time. time.
Any other thoughts? Okay.
Are you talking about the additional load of the second floor on that existing? Okay, the location of the depot, depended on floodplain. That's why it had to be elevated. This comes close. The only thing that we would have to do is reshape I mean, these are very preliminary. We don't have a survey, but we did overlay GIS, and the front area is okay. This back area, what we would have to look at doing is raising this back area up to meet the same floor elevation, which we would do as the existing building. So if we did that, which we would do, that would basically reshape that floodplain area and put this a foot above the floodplain level. So yes, we would have to take that into consideration, but based on meeting the finished floor of the existing building, we wouldn't have to elevate it like we did the just based on where the floodplain lines and zones lay on the existing map. Now that's a 98%, and you know what happens with the 2%. It's a very good question, but in taking into consideration, that's the approach that we would take. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just.
That's a good question.
Going along here, I believe that I may be wrong, but we were sailing along here pretty good on the depot, and we had a little get together up here. Somebody started throwing around $120,000 extra. I believe that's what it costed, wasn't it?
Well,
That's what I'm trying to get at, Sammy.
yeah.
Down the road,
Sure.
are we gonna run into something like that?
Well,
Here,
I'm
location.
not gonna say we're not, because I've learned too many times that things happen, but that particular project with the depot was the exact location. That's why we had to go. Now, the additional cost of the depot was also based on the grant was only so much money, and the original conversation is, guys, it's gonna get us close, but we're gonna have to put in additional money. Now, putting on the piers, that raised the cost. But it was a combination of the grant was only so much, it was in the floodplain, and we had to elevate it. So those were the parameters. But in looking at this, if we met the existing finished floor, which we would just have to reshape this area in the back.
That would be something we would know before due.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the next stage of this is getting all of those additional engineering components involved in looking at this.
Drilling and so we had to.
Well,
Yeah.
as far as, soils, we would definitely get, soil samples as far as drilling on this back portion.
All the questions done.
Mr. Mayor, if I can ask, just to catch up, the discussions about financing, the money that's being proposed to use, for part of that, maybe. It's my understanding there was previously commitment made to use some money for communications upgrades for fire and police. Is that still honoring that commitment, or is?
Yes. What the board voted on to spend the ARPA money on, all of that money is still sitting aside. The only thing that we've actually spent so far was the $70,000 in premium pay that we voted on last November, and then the 2 donations to nonprofits, which were the Main Street and the Sampo donations made, and those 2 totaled $70,000. So we've spent $140,000, and that is exactly what was in the spreadsheet. And we can change that ARPA designation if we want also, but that is what we voted on so far. There's still $700,000 set aside for the community center to purchase that building. There's $300,000, I think, is that right, John? Was it around $300,000?
250, 300,
$325,000,
yeah,
something like that,
250, 300.
for the communications. There's some money set aside to add a kiosk so that people can do things remotely. And I'm not even gonna end up doing that, I'm just gonna do a Dropbox instead, so they can drop their payments in instead of doing a kiosk, so we're gonna have a little bit of extra there. There's some money set aside to pay the lease from the railroad on the marketplace. And all of those things were made whenever the ARPA restrictions were very strict. And once they came out with the final rule, it became, spend that, because if you're a city that's getting less than $10 million, you just spend that on whatever you need to operate the government. So the restrictions on that money are much more flexible now than they were. But at this point, as it was voted back in maybe December, I think, we are still in line with everything that was voted, which has the $300,000 set aside for communication equipment and the $700,000 set aside for this building, and then several other smaller projects.
And in terms of this being a ongoing project, has there been any estimation of an operational budget that's going to become a recurring budget item every year?
I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's the thing I am the most nervous about. I think that everybody's on board with the project and wants to go ahead with it. That said, I think we need to spend some real time at some point, and maybe that's what we can do with our time until while Sam's working on engineering drawings. What department's gonna be responsible for this building? Who's gonna handle the reservations for using this building? Because I will tell you right now, we have people call City Hall every week asking for a community room that they can rent, or where can we practice indoor cheerleading, or where can we practice? There needs to be a discussion about what department is gonna handle that. Are we gonna have a person that does nothing but double checks after someone has this as a banquet hall and make sure that it's not messed up and that the toilets aren't ripped out of the wall and whatever else? Like, I mean, we have had no discussion about operational maintenance of this building, so that definitely needs to be something that we talk about. And I don't know that may not need to either be the community center committee or even appoint a separate committee to kind of talk about how to actually maintain this building going forward. Because I think it's gonna be very popular. I think the community really wants it and they'll be very excited about it, so I think it'll see a lot of use.
It's kind of like the visitor center, the success that we've had with that, there's still the operational cost of staffing, of
Or
utilities.
Engelman Park. I mean, Engelman Park is booked constantly all the time now, so it's good that they're using facilities. That's why we want to build them. That's a good thing, but we do need to think about how we're going to structure that.
Okay,
Is that something that we passed on to the committee?
Because I don't know the people that are on the committee for the community center, if they should be the same people making decisions about the staffing. You know what I mean? I almost
Well,
feel
you
like that
just-
should be a different group, maybe.
Just
well, we can always
someone.
pick that up and,
But as Sam does the drawings and stuff during that 3 or 4 month period, that might be a good time for us to have those discussions internally about how we're gonna operate this
Yeah.
thing.
Might not be a bad idea. Maybe we could look around through the state. Somebody's got something in this square footage range. What does it cost you to operate? So we'll get
That's a very
that.
good suggestion. And we're lucky that our new Main Street Director, Josh, actually ran the visitors, or the community center for DeKalb County before he came here, so I'm sure he might have some insight too that we can pick his brain
that'd
about.
be a good job for him.
Maybe take a couple, field trips or something.
Athens YMCA building would be probably a good one to.
Athens has a software they're using, and they use it for both park reservations, like Engelman Park and things like that, and for their community center. So I feel like that might be an option too that we can
Couple
look
good-
into.
What about that in Knoxville we went to?
Yeah,
up
the
there?
Change Center, that was really neat.
Okay, So Monday night at our council meeting, we will bring it up if, with permission of the council, to let Sam go ahead, get your part done.
I'll get a proposal pulled together for the next phases.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that? Any problem with that? So you'll have it from here on out, okay?
I'll give the information for discussion.
Yeah, okay. Okay, good. Okay, let me bring something else up. It's not on the agenda. I talked to the guy that is building the dollar store. He says that they've worked out agreement with T-Dec. Everything's fine. From what I understand, they have closed on that land. And he told me, again, he would like to give the city of Sweetwater the Biggs building. My question is, how does the council feel about saying, yes, we'll take it? You know, do we want it? Can we use it? I think personally, it being the oldest building in Sweetwater, I think we need it. I think it should be, we can set aside some money, I think, to fix it up and make it attractive, and we've already had 2 or 3 things to come up we could use it for, right? But I do think we need it. So he's gonna be presenting that to the city. And, any thoughts?
I think if we do take it, we need to make the commitment to refurbish it and make everything usable. Just my opinion. Yeah, we'll take it and just leave it sitting there and continue to deteriorate.
Right, yeah.
It's not gonna be a good thing.
And one thing about it, we can take it, leave it sitting there, and we can improve it 217% by giving it mold.
Exactly. It's one of our, what's the term y'all use, Eddie? Reoccurring, or repeat offenders. It's one of our repeat offenders.
So what he's gonna give us is not so much the Biggs building as it is that spring.
Yeah.
So we gotta get that water from here to there with the building set where the water did run.
Well, he said he got it worked
That's
out.
a problem.
Well, it's my understanding, if that crosses their property, which it does, then they have to maintain that flow. But as far as submission to John and the planning commission, that was a whole lot of the discussion that they would have to answer and submit. So if he told the mayor that they've got it worked out with T-Dec, then they should have met all those parameters that it takes, especially with a blue line stream / spring that way. However, I haven't seen them. I mean, you hadn't seen any of the new ones?
I just got an email today.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Their SWIP permit, they got it filed, and they've also, filed their NOI with T-Dec. So,
Okay.
once they get all of that approval from T-Dec to move forward, all those I's are dotted and T's are crossed once they get the confirmation from T-Dec.
Sure.
But they did have their SWIP permit, they sent that, a PDF, of that, where it had been submitted, and then they're just waiting on the NOI, the notice of intent to proceed with construction and all that stuff. Once they get that from T-Dec, then they should be ready to roll.
Do we know if they've done a survey off the big section yet, or we know where that line's gonna be?
I don't know, I haven't seen that, a survey showing exactly where that line is. My guess is they would probably submit that with their site plan when all this stuff comes before planning. Because the first thing that they did when they came to planning commission was to rezone, and they submitted like a preliminary site plan kind of showing where the line would be, but it wasn't a true survey showing exactly where it's gonna be.
Before the grass grew up, there were flags down there, so somebody's done something.
So my guess is that they would submit that with their formal site plan, so we know exactly where those lines are.
Well, he told me that everything looked like it was a go, so. But we'll be thinking about that. I think if he gives it to us, I think we should take it.
What's the time frame? Next month, month after, next
I'm
week?
Well, the reason I brought it before the plan, he's gonna have to come back before the planning commission and everything, and if he's offers the city, why, me or you or somebody be able to say the city says, if they offer it, we'll take it. You know, if that's a good way to put it. Okay, got a race Saturday. That's the Rocky Top race.
The Rocky Top Run and the Knoxville Track Club Half Marathon is this Saturday. It starts at 8 a.m. We've got police, fire, parks and rec, street department, office people all there to help pull it off. So there'll be a lot of people in town. Of course, the weather is calling for rain. There's a hurricane coming in. So,
Did they
Better
have
call
that
that
last
beer.
year?
exactly the same, yeah. It was a monsoon last year, so.
Okay, I have a thank you from Sue Stockton and family. Says thank you so much for the flowers and all of your thoughts and prayers, Sue Stockton, pertaining to Billy Wayne. Veterans Day Parade is going to be November the 12th. John, you got anything to report that's happening in Sweetwater? You might give us this time? Campbell?
Let's see, well, just what you talked about, got that email from the Dollar General that, I think they were waiting to close on that property until they got all that stuff, worked out with TDEC to where they could build there, so that looks like it's moving forward now. Just more housing, folks got two, applications for rezoning requests, one that we talked about in planning commission out there off Waymire. Another one came through today for some more, a request to do some more townhomes, so it just looks like more and more housing popping up. Of course, all that would have to be approved by planning commission first. So more housing, more businesses trying to locate here. Hopefully getting close on one there off 68. It's kind of been on the agenda for a while, but it looks like that one is winding down too. So, that's the restaurant on 68 there.
With a request from Burnett on the annexation, will it be ready for the agenda on Monday night?
Well, that's on him. It'll go before, so the application to be annexed will be on the planning commission, the time on the third Monday, so it'll be October 17th, it goes to planning commission. He's requested it to be annexed. If the planning commission approves that, then it goes to the city board, so that will be on
I
the
thought the
November.
planning commission already approved it the other night.
They approved his subdivision, the plat, the subdividing of those lots. The first time it came to planning commission, there was, it was denied because the gas line easement that was coming through there wasn't addressed. So he had to go back and address that. That's what came before planning commission, to approve the subdivision of those properties. So it's currently 2 lots. He's wanting to chop it up into 5 lots and build. So that plat was approved based on those 2 or 3 things he had to clean up, one of them being that colonial easement there. That just approved the subdivision of that property. Now he's requesting to have that annexed into the city. So he filled out that application. He came in last week and filled that out. Now that has to go before planning commission. So
Okay.
that would be on the October, so it would come before city council in November.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
John Anderson, anything going on with the fire department?
Saying, well, I had a fireman turn in his resignation, another one going to Loudon. I guess next board meeting, I want to promote one probably to full-time, but everything else been quiet.
Good. Eddie, Goody?
Well, one thing I probably need the board to take action or give recommendations on. I've already had people start asking one city's gonna observe Halloween. And it's on a Monday, and it's on the 31st, so that's the answer I'm telling them. I hope I'm telling the right answer. I saw Jessica was kind enough, she put a banner up downtown that's got the date on it. I thought, well, maybe that'll help. I think somewhere back down the road, we may have changed it, or didn't do it, I mean, I don't know, but somebody expected to always be on a Friday night, the weather nice, or on
I'm gonna
Saturday.
get on Facebook and ask that question right now.
Oh,
It's
I
like
think
when
yeah,
that
just
lady asked why we
put
were
it on
having
Sunday
eclipse
and
on
swim on
Monday.
Yeah, we asked 50 times.
So I assume that we're gonna do Halloween on the 31st, and I've talked to several residents now, I personally went myself to make sure, and I talked to several residents on Mays Avenue, and they were gonna close it down like we had previously before last year. I didn't do it last year because I thought with the COVID and everything, I thought there won't be as many. About an hour into it, I had horrible regrets, and I was
We were
wrong.
looking for cones everywhere.
Yes, I was wrong, and I had the firemen helping me, street department, everybody carrying cones, so we'll be blocking it off. And we're moving along.
Okay, Tim,
Everything's good.
I saw you up there with a bucket at Engelman Park. Y'all redoing the roof or something?
No, putting lighting on all the buildings.
Oh, lighting.
Outside lighting, we're gonna leave it,
When does,
we're gonna leave it going all year long.
when does Splash Pad close?
Probably next 2 to 3 weeks, we're not set a date yet, just depending on the weather. Probably by the middle of October, I'll have it shut down.
Okay,
One thing I did fail to mention, Mayor, sorry, just, I think everybody's aware of this, but just to make sure you are, is the, communication tower that, Red Stag had agreed to, section off a portion of land on Cedar Valley Road up on top of the ridge there. I think John had worked some with them on this, John Anderson, it's through Monroe County. So just a small portion, this was before the planning commission as well, but they agreed to, donate a small, about 3/4 of an acre up on top of the ridge so that we could, the county could erect an emergency communication tower. So fire, police, everybody would have use of that. So, that did get approved before planning commission the other night. That, is not something I believe that would come before the board, but just so y'all are aware of it. So it's in the county's hands now. They have a plan.
To elaborate on that a little bit more, for what, year and a half, 2 years, we worked on this, and Red Stag, we tried to find tower sites to put the new tower all over that ridge. And finally, when Red Stag bought this, Jordan agreed to donate us a spot to put the tower. The county is paying for the tower, the $1.something million. So everything is done, the county's voted to accept the property. Now they're just trying to hash out another site that they're trying to do over on Ball Play somewhere. So they can buy both the towers at the same time and save money. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. But that goes back to the communication stuff we're talking about, the radio money that we have to buy radios in to be able to talk to everybody, so.
We wouldn't need to use it if they didn't do the tower.
The tower has to be put over here for us to be able to talk to them.
well, we always get what's left over anyway.
I think that's good kudos to Red Stag though too,
Yeah.
Mayor and Board. I mean, for them to come through that quick and us being in need because
Yeah.
John was, I mean, it was falling through everywhere we checked and then they found out we had a need and they met it.
He just,
I
he
mean,
said,
almost instantly.
how much property do you want up there? That's all he asked.
Thought that was good.
They're a good partner. Olivia, you next, you got anything to report?
No.
Okay. Anything else come forward?
I know this is their job, but, you have to see some of these boys, you like what TMG looks like now.
Yep.
What it did look like. You might mention it to some of these street boys.
That's right.
I'm glad you brought that up. John, where do we stand on TMG Wild with Buster?
Well, we just had a Zoom conference this morning with Reed Dixon, who's the county attorney, and with Bobby Lee, who's representing the county on all of these tax issues that are in the Chancery Court in Knox County. it's gotten put off pretty much for the last whole year because she keeps finding lawyers to represent her when the ones that she has quit. When they've all quit. Most recent ones were Baker Donaldson, and they quit. Well, I don't know when exactly they filed their motion to withdraw, but the court allowed them to withdraw just at 60 days ago, and allowed her 60 days to find new counsel. They can't proceed. It's not like any of us. We can go into court and represent ourselves, but the owner there is a corporation. They can only appear in court through a lawyer. And right now, Bobby Lee is going to submit an order to Chancellor Weaver that'll make his decision final. And once that happens, they'll have 30 days to appeal, and I predict she won't be able to find any lawyer to take that on. In the other court, it was held up for the same reason, but in addition to that, they just had a lame duck chancellor and a new chancellor that just now took office first of this month. And Bobby Lee is going to renew his motion to dismiss that case because they've not paid any taxes this whole time. And the law says they have to at least tender the tax on the amount that they say the property's worth. And they haven't done that. The Attorney General has sent somebody from Nashville the last time they had a hearing on that, because that exemption depends on it being a not-for-profit corporation, and there's a whole division at the Attorney General's office who oversees that. So they'll be there supporting the dismissal as well. All that being said, if he got those motions filed tomorrow, I'm sure it would be 45 days to 60 days from now before they get a hearing on it. So it's better than it was, but we're still a little ways away. Once that's taken care of, I'm going to add the TNG to the tax sale that we're working on right now. I'm not really going to wait for them. If that stuff doesn't get wrapped up, we might have to pull it back out of the sale. But I'm going to go ahead and add it to the sale that we've got coming up. Based on all the things that we have to do to get ready for the sale, I'm guessing the sale will be somewhere between April and June. So, sort of like trying to look out into the future about this community center. It's all sort of fluid, and too many things depend on too many other things. But right now, I'm hopeful that it'll be sold for taxes in the next tax sale.
We
Okay.
want to make sure we get our bills in, because there's a bunch of them.
Y'all did a great job, Buster. Boys
Well,
did.
them boys have done a good job.
Uh,
And Eddie, you tell that guy if you happen to catch him that stole our bush hog, he done us a favor. We got a brand new one, $2,000 cheaper than what we could have traded that and bought.
So you don't want this over, then?
No, not unless it's for a tractor.
I think we've talked to him a
Just
couple
tell
of
him,
times.
he brings it back, bring the tractor with him.
Also, the gym roof collapsed last week. I know Commissioner Stutz is aware of that too. Right after the police department ran some children off from the property. So we're really glad y'all were up there when you were, and we're really glad it didn't collapse
And
until
I'm gonna
after.
tell you,
it
I'm
did.
glad that Buster and the group did clean that up, because it makes it, we ran two groups off that I personally went on, because with it grown up, you couldn't see who was up in there.
So at what point,
We need to put another gate.
do we basically surround the whole thing with a 10-foot fence and razor. Well, I'm not joking.
I mean, we've been up there and
John and I
boarded it.
talked about that.
Yeah, we've been up there and boarded it all off. That lasted, what, 3 months maybe? You know, when Chuck went up there and we all cleaned it up before, it
Right.
didn't last no time.
We may need to check with council, if we did have the right to put just a gate or a chain or something, I mean, they're just driving up the drive now.
I mean, her lack of anything for the last 12 years has kept the city in liability
Yeah.
for the last 12 years.
And unfortunately, it's young people off these ghost hunters that we're finding up there. I mean, it's on these websites, it's being haunted, so it's bringing people from, I think these others was from Greenville.
I mean, it's so bad up there, guys, that my guys go up there just to look to see where the hazards are. We do it every 2 or 3 months. And I've got guys that go in burning buildings that won't walk in that place. I mean, it's so bad.
What gym was it?
It'd be the old gym,
The old gym.
on
The one
Peachtree
by the
side.
alley,
Yeah.
the one on the alley.
And it,
It was about that way 3 or 4 months ago when I looked at it. The big wood beams that were in there had already begun to turn loose.
The good thing is, so far, it seems to be caving in on itself, and some of those outside structural walls, those brick walls, have not fallen out. But if those fall out, then it becomes a bigger problem, because as it's caving in on itself, hopefully, knock on wood, nobody's inside there. But if it begins to fall outwardly, then it, could spill over onto somebody or someone else's property. So when we were up there looking at it last week, taking some pictures, it has caved in on itself so far. But if some of those outside walls, those exterior structural walls begin to fall outwardly, potentially could, whoever's next to it, or, if
Then
they,
you've got a basement below that. Did it go all the way through into the basement?
I don't know, we looked at it from above and I snapped some pictures, but I didn't
Is
go
the
into it.
facade worth saving? I mean, can it be saved?
I don't know, you'd have to get engineers involved in that.
You're talking about are you talking about just the gym?
No, the facade front
It's the
castle
whole right side has already fell in and went down through the rooms.
at the castle. Oh, man.
But to your point, Sam, as far as liability goes, I mean, maybe it would be worth our time and effort to, like John said, it's been fenced off, it's been posted, but maybe Rob and I could go up there this week and just refresh some of the signs around the perimeter, like, when you're going hunting, no hunting signs. I mean, at least we've done our due diligence to post it, but we can't,
But once again, and I know we have bookend attorneys, and I'm the dumbest guy in the room when it comes to law. She's been hiding behind the law and due process for 12 years. What does that open us up to suits
What should
and
we have done 5 years ago?
liability? But I'm just saying, if we know that a building has collapsed and could potentially go outward, anybody walking by and the property lines that's so close, you see my point and intent? So
there's risk out there.
so what can we do to limit that for the city?
Surrounded with 10-foot wall and
That's why,
I mean,
I'm gonna say this, two lawyers, John sent him a letter, Studs will tell Eddie to shoot him. We're gonna win.
John, we have the ability, like, this was a house I owned, and I'm letting it fall in. You could cite me about fix it or tear it down. Do we not have
we
any
are, we
provision to do
cited,
that?
we cited her 5 weeks ago or so,
Yeah.
and still haven't got service of process on.
Well, hire another process server.
Like Sam was saying, she's hiding behind due process.
John and I said last week, we were just gonna drive down there and stick it on the door of wherever she's living.
That's sitting here, and I just thought of something. I know why we're seeing a bunch of kids up there. Cause I mean, we're seeing the guys are telling me they're running them off down at the beauty salon before they even get up the hill. That's exactly what it's.
I know the guy lives, I
Then we
think
get
that
on
with
Monday.
Bryce's house, he's very upset over it.
I think if we were to start making money off charging admission, she'd probably be up here in 2 seconds flat, and then we could get her served.
She'd be sitting there at the end of the road with his buddy.
Now, we just met, I just mentioned about Reed being the county attorney, but he's also our administrative hearing officer on all of our property issues. And we just met with him. We've actually never had a hearing before that. But that statute that, under which he's appointed, and that we passed an ordinance, gives us the authority on non-residential property, which this is, to fine her up to $500 per day until she remedies the shortcomings. You know what, that's not gonna get anything done. It's, cause she's
Well, at what point could you just go up there and demolish?
at the point that you all decide that instead of spending $2 million on a community center, you wanna spend 500, 600,000 of that on whatever it would take to demolish it. You know, every which way you look, there's potential liability and there's a lot of expense.
That's one of the reasons why we haven't gone through with the redevelopment plan, is because if we do the redevelopment plan and condemn that property under the eminent domain action, then that makes the city the owner of that property, and do we want that liability? And do we have the $1.5 million or more that it's gonna take to tear it down, and that's if we don't have a bunch of asbestos remediation that we have to do.
I thought that sort of read up. We listened to this guy, told us this about the housing authority.
It's done. We can evoke eminent domain and do that condemnation proceeding if we want to, if that's the path you all wanna take. To do it as a redevelopment plan, we have to basically sign to the housing authority, we're gonna take full liability for this. You guys are off the hook on it, we're gonna take liability on it, but we have to do it under the housing authority.
But they're on the hook right now, aren't they? Housing authority,
Say it again.
they're on the hook now.
They're the only entity that the city has that has the legal authority to be able to invoke eminent domain and condemn that property as a redevelopment plan. But the housing authority is saying, well, we're not gonna take that liability. If the city wants to take it and guarantee us that they're taking the liability for it, then we'll move forward with eminent domain and do the redevelopment plan. The attorney for the redevelopment plan, Mark Raymondtoff, he's given us the plan. We've had the public hearing, we filed everything that we were supposed to do for the redevelopment plan. So technically, one of your avenues is to evoke eminent domain through the housing authority and issue that redevelopment plan and take proposals from developers. Here's the problem with that. Until the tax suit is settled and we can explain what the dollar amount is due on back taxes, which we have no legal authority to waive, what developer is gonna say, okay, yeah, I'll put a bid in on that. I have no idea whether we owe $200,000 in back taxes or $1 million in back taxes. That's the range we're talking about. Until Chancellor Weaver's office does the valuation and actually seals it in at a certain number. So it still all goes back to the taxes and getting that value on there, right? That gives us many options once
We
that
have
is.
to keep our goal, our eyes on the final goal, and that is to get it in a private taxpayer's hands so that we can start collecting some taxes instead of, and we don't, it's really like redevelopment and condemnation of the buildings really are a long way around to get us there with a lot of,
And technically, we
pitfalls in
could
the
go ahead and
meantime.
tear down that building. We could go through that process, take a few months, tear down that property, and then we'll probably get our money back whenever we put proposals out and take proposals from the developer. We'll probably get our money back for that. But do we wanna tie up that huge amount of capital just to tear a building down? I don't know. I mean, really.
It would appear that Shakespeare was right. First thing let's do, kill all the lawyers.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim, tell your lawyer.
I didn't know you were his, I didn't know you were his.
Everything's for
There is a sign that's still up though on Beach Street that has,
He's gonna put on new tomorrow, and I'm gonna change it off. Yeah. Where the kids want, but that's why it is, it's just how it is. And I'm gonna tell you, now, they don't wanna go around it. That's what they're wanting. Yeah, that's what they're wanting.
Take some blank crowns up there.
it's probably an easier answer too. With a time machine, we go back to 2008 and do what Jim's does trying to get us to do then, which was to take the property then before the system left.
Or do what I was thinking, had that job applications in there. The kids will get it.
They would have.
Yeah.
But now, Doyle, to his defense, Doyle did call, I mean, he talked to the Japanese president the night before they were scheduled to close with Swissy and give it away to Swissy for nothing. And Aeroflex said if they could pay $500,000, the Japanese president
Sure, I
said
wanna
he
go
would
on
back and said,
record saying I
no,
was
proceeding
gonna
is coming
recommend
to
you
Swissy
tonight,
as a
and I
donation.
didn't know if you wanted to take credit.
Don't
for
negotiate
that
this
up or not.
anymore.
That's the, is that the
And
same thing?
I live right across the road,
That
I
the
mean,
same
how
thing?
much I mean, that's what I appreciate.
In their culture?
Maybe.
Failure.
Swissy knew exactly what they were doing. They ended up closing together because they could also do culture things in the Japanese.
What's your name? Let me know about it.
If only they'd known exactly what they were doing before the war.
Because, yeah,
There is actually a court, right, that protects the city from not condemning. I don't think we can be sued for not condemning. Even if somebody's hurt. There was that one case in Memphis where his church collapsed.
Just let me know. I'll stay with it.
I thought the state tort statute said you can't, I'm pretty sure that's what they talked about. They can't sue us for failure to condemn. Let a kid get killed with her.
I want to say that in Memphis, but I've been up there last Thursday, I think, you guys, there's nothing.
Well, here's the thing that takes me off. What would we have done if Little
We've been over that thing from one end to the other, every hole.
So we're gonna get down the road, but Swan Creek, it's a property, an $8 million property. for
They,
nothing.
I'm telling you, I got you.
Well, now Clifford sued. Clifford sued and got his fees for $11,000. Clifford Wilson sued and got his fees, yeah.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, my guys are idiots.
Well, it sounds like it.
And they, maybe, they're building price.
Yeah, I understand
There's some parts I.
You're older, hey.
Jim, I'm telling you, I was with Jim last time we were up there, I looked at those old wooden beams right there, and they were just, I mean, they look like, beginning to look like crazy, so the water could get in there. Now, you go to the upstairs gym, the upstairs basketball court above the old weight room, you have to go around all day. You probably played on it, you had to have played on it, cause I did.
The two gyms that I remember is, like, if you're looking, this is the front. There's the one that's interior, that's got, basically, the seating is up above, kinda like the, Hoosiers movie. And then there's the old one over here.
Yep.
And our locker room for the post grads was in the corner of that one, but it was in the basement area.
It was in the basement down below that the one you're talking about's here, in the basement, went in here, down into the old locker room.
The alley's here.
Yeah, then there's over here where the old weight room was, there's a old basketball court up about there.
Let me ask this question. How much safer would 12 or 14 hours from the track go out there? Not calling shit off, just knocking shit down. How much safer would it be?
It wouldn't take that long.
I mean, are we allowed to do
Because
that?
we've done it before.
Well, that's.
We did it right down here on 4th of July, if I'm not mistaken. We sent Jim Miller down there because they were not doing anything, push those walls in after the fire.
Oh.
we pushed all the walls
You
in.
can take
because-
336 out there and you can knock some shit down.
Well, there's nothing on it, that back building we're talking about with the weight room, that's the only building that's left worth saving. It's not started leaking bad yet. Everything else is falling in.
If you don't knock it down, knock the whole damn thing
I mean, got it, I mean, I went up there, you
I'm sorry.
it breaks my heart, but
down. I did swimming lessons when I was a kid at TMI.
It's
That's all I
beyond.
remember. But,
Well, I'm telling you, front facade, I'm not an engineer, I'm sure there is a way to save it. But I don't know that I wanna cut everything loose and go to bracing it all up to try to save it. Because everything, if you're looking at the center of the building,